Okay, so here we've got an example of a frequency table, and the question is asking me to find the mean. So it's really important to understand the context of the question. So I'm being told that Bora counts the number of fruits her 14 classmates eat in a day. So I know the question is about fruits eaten in a day, and I know that she has 14 classmates. I'm being asked to find out the mean. Now, how do we normally work out the mean? The mean, if you're just given a set of data, is where you add all the values together. So we say the sum of values. Sum just means adding, so the addition of everything that you have. So the sum of the values divided by how many values you have. So the number of values that you're given. So a quick example, just to recap if you've forgotten, if we had, let's say, 3, 8, 12, I would work out the mean by adding the numbers together, 3 plus 8 plus 12, the values, and dividing by how many values I had. Okay, so just a quick recap if you've forgotten, to work out the mean, you add all the values together and you divide by the number of values that you have. So let's see if we can apply this to the data in my table. Now, if I think about it, 4 people had 0 fruits. So if I tried to write this out as data, I would get 4 lots of 0, okay? Because there are 4 people that were asked and they all had 0 fruits each. Then I've got a frequency of 3, so 3 people, 3 of her classmates, had 1 fruit each. So that's 3 lots of answers that would have contained a 1. Then 5 of her classmates, so they ate 2 fruits each. So I'd write 5 lots of 2. And finally, I'm told that 2 of her classmates had 3 fruits each. Hopefully that's what most of us are on. Okay, so that would be what my set of values look like if it was just written as a set of data, which is probably what most of you are used to doing. And you know, to work out the mean, we would add all the values up together and divide by how many there are. Now the frequency tells you the amount / how many. And in this question, we're already given the amount of people. So we're told that there are 14 classmates. So what I can do is add that up. 4 plus 3 plus 5 plus 2 gives me 14. That is the total number of values. Remember, how do you work out the mean? It's the sum of all the values divided by the total number of values. Now, another way of saying the total number of values would be to say the total frequency. Okay, so frequency just means how many, in this case, how many people were asked. We know it's 14, so we're going to use that at the very end. Okay, so if I were to do this like normal, so if I were to say, okay, I want to work out the mean, so I need to add all these values together and then divide by the total frequency, which in this case, hopefully you can see is 14. Then I could do it like this, 0 plus 0 plus 0. What does that give me? Well, in total, that's 0. But because I've got a frequency table, I can actually do something that makes it a lot quicker. So instead of just adding the values together, repeated addition is the same as multiplication. So if you are adding something a certain number of times, it's the same as multiplying that thing. So instead of saying 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0, I could have just done 0 times 4, which gives me 0. In total, 0 amount of fruit were eaten by all these people. What would I do to work out the next part? Well, 1 plus 1 plus 1, that gives me 3. But so does 1 times 3. What would I have done if it was values? 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, which I know is 10, but can also be worked out by doing 2 times 5, which is 10. So this column here is what I call my frequency times by x, or frequency times by whatever value set of data you're trying to work out. We just call it x because x can represent absolutely anything. So normally it might help if you write that's your frequency times x, so the amount of times each value has been represented. And finally, 3 times 2, well, if I added them together I'd get 6, but also 3 times 2 is 6. Now I've shown you what the values would look like because this is quite a simple table, but sometimes you've got things with a frequency of 1,000 or 20,000. So for that reason, it's useful to know that repeated addition is the same as multiplication. So instead of writing all the values out and adding them, which could take a very long time, we just multiply across the table and it gives us the same result. Hopefully you see that if you added that together, that would be 0 plus 3 plus 10 plus 6, which would give you the total of your mean. So if I added that, I would get 19. And 19 is the sum of all my values. So that data would be represented like this. The final column tells me what the sum of all my values would be. So the mean from this frequency table would be 19 over 14. So the mean is the frequency times x total. And what that just means is generally you're going to be given your set of values. The second column is going to be the frequency. So it's your first column times by the second column gives you your f of x, your frequency times the total, the final column. Okay, so to work out the mean, we do the frequency times the total divided by the total frequency. So in this case, 19 divided by 14 would give me 1.36. And I've just seen that you can't see that properly, so let me just write that up again. So the mean is the frequency times by the total divided by the total frequency. Yeah, so the frequency times by x total, frequency times by x total divided by the total frequency. Okay, so here we've got another example. So let's see if we can apply this knowledge to this question here. So David counts the number of students that are present in each of his classes, and he puts the data in a frequency table. And we're being asked to use it to find the mean. So once again, context is important. The number of students are in the first column here. The frequency are here. So in 2 classes, there were 22 students present. Okay, so I'm going to show you both ways, because if you get really stuck and you just don't know how to make sense of the table, write out the data and work out the mean the long way. So if there are 2 classes that had 22 students in, my data would have been 2 lots of 22. Okay, and if I used that to work out the mean, I would have added that together, which is 44. Or you could have done the short way, because repeated addition, adding something the same amount like 2 times, is the same as multiplying it by 2. Then I've got 3 classes had 25 students in them. So I would have had 3 lots of 25, which I could also just multiply. You choose whichever way works better for you, adding or multiplying. Hopefully with time, you'll get more comfortable acknowledging that multiplying this column by this column is the same as writing the values out. One class had 26 students in it, so I'd have 26 as one piece of data. 4 classes had 28 students in it, and 28 plus 28 plus 28 would be 112. And then the final set of data is 6 of his classes had 30 students in it each. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 times 30 would give me 180, or you could have just added them all together. Now, how do I work out the mean? It's the sum of all the values. So all of these values added up together, if I added them all, I would get 44 plus 75 plus 26 plus 112 plus 180. So I would add all these values up. And if you notice in this table, you haven't been given a total column, and sometimes that's going to happen. So it's up to you to remember this is what you have to do. We might want to fill this in as f times by x. X just represents the values you've been given. So in this case, the students in the class. So adding all these numbers up together would give me 437. So that is the sum of all my values, or the f times x total. And I always divide that by the number of values, which is the frequency column total. Okay, so my f of x total to work out the mean would be 437 divided by the total number of values. Now, how many classmates were asked? 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 4 plus 6 gives me 16. Okay, so it's up to you to realise that you need to come up with that final total column. So I do 437 divided by 16, and the mean is 27.3. So an average, there were 27.3 students in its classes. Obviously you can't have 0.3, so if it was asking you to round it in real life, you would say 27. But normally with the mean, they want to know the exact value, so don't round it unless you've been asked to. Okay, so here's our final example where we've got, as you can see, a lot of data. So if I were to write it out, like if I were to write out 3 42 times, that would take a really long time. If I were to write out 6 324 times, that would take a lot of time. And then to type that all into my calculator would take forever. So when we've got a table like this, it's important that we know how to do it the shortcut way. So when I've got this, my final column is always my frequency times by x, and x is always like the things that you're trying to work out. So we're trying to work out the mean shoe size, so x is going to be shoe size. Okay, so frequency times shoe size, I do 3 times 42, which would give me 126, 4 times 55, 220, 5 times 212, 1060, 6 times 324, 1944, 7 times 178, 1246, 8 times 59, 472. So 9 times 43 would be 387, 10 times 62 is 620, and 11 times 7 is 77. Okay, so this column is always going to be the sum of your values column. Okay, so you know the mean, you use the sum of all the values divided by the number of values. The last column, the one that you create, is going to be your sum of values. So we're always working with totals, and once again, they haven't given you a total column. It's up to you to know you have to do that. So I add all of my values together, and that would give me 6,152. So obviously you can see that would have taken quite a while to type into the calculator. And I add up my frequency column, which would give me 982. So then my mean would be 6152 divided by 982. And if I type that into my calculator, 982, I would get the mean is 6.26. So Jane wanted to know what the mean shoe size was, 6.26. And that's how you work out the mean of a frequency table.